artists. For this week's art activity, we're going to be drawing Mickey Mouse in the style of the artist Romero Britto. Romero Britto is a contemporary artist. That means he's an artist that is alive and working right now. He's from Miami, Florida, and the style of art that he creates is called pop art. Pop art, or popular art, is art that is based on images that are popular to everyone throughout the world. So artists who work in the pop art style, like Romero Britto, are always looking for pictures to include in their work that will be recognized by everyone, not just in the United States, but in different countries. No matter who happens to see the art, they would recognize the product or the picture in the art. And one of the most recognizable characters throughout the world is Mickey Mouse. So Romero Britto has done a whole series of paintings and sculptures and drawings that are based on Disney characters, especially the character of Mickey. We're going to use his Mickey Mouse pictures as inspiration for our work. We're going to start by drawing Mickey first, step by step. We're going to learn how to draw Mickey's head using simple lines and shapes that we already know. And then we're going to take Romero Britto's bright, patterned, colorful backgrounds that he creates in his work and create one similar in ours using markers and crayons. For this lesson, you need a white piece of paper, any size will do. You need a pencil to draw with an eraser in case you make a mistake. You're definitely going to want a black marker so that you can trace your drawing of Mickey before you go on to your background. Remember, it doesn't have to be permanent. Any black marker will work. And for the colorful background, it's up to you what you want to use. You could use crayons and markers. That's what I used for mine. A little bit of both. Or just crayons, or maybe color pencils. Or if you want to get real creative and try some paint, that's your choice. So let's get our materials together and get started on our Mickey project. Now before we begin our drawing, you're going to want to take your white paper and turn it across horizontal in front of you. That way you have enough room to draw Mickey's head and include the colorful background designs. Now I'm going to be drawing Mickey step by step, and I'm going to be using the steps that are on the handout that's included in the project PowerPoint. You can use this video to go through the steps, of course, but if you need to see it up close and you want to use this handout as a reference, it'll be right in the PowerPoint for you. Remember, you can always pause the video as much as you need to after each step so that you could take your time and then just hit play when you are ready to move on to the next step. Now, Mickey's head is going to be the biggest part of our picture, so we want to draw it in the center and we don't want to make it too tiny. I'm going to be using a marker to draw so everyone can see. You should absolutely be drawing with a pencil so that you can erase in case you make a mistake. Now I'm going to be doing Mickey's head forward view so that we could see his eyes, his nose, and his nice big smile completely. If you happen to look around, especially on the internet, and you did some searching, there's lots of different step-by-step drawing lessons on how to draw Mickey. If you want to try to pick one a little bit different and challenge yourself, maybe one that shows his whole body, of course you can, but I'm going to stick with his face. So we're going to start by making some very simple lines and shapes to start Mickey's curve of his head and his rounded ears. So I'm going to go towards the center of my paper and I'm going to start by making a curved line. It's almost as if I was making a circle. I'm just not going to make the bottom half. Remember, if it looks a little too small or if it doesn't look curved enough or something isn't right, you just erase it and fix it before we go on to the next step. You should be looking at what you do after each step. That way you can always fix your drawing before you move on to the next. Now Mickey has nice big round ears on the top of his head, so I'm going to go towards the side. I'm going to put my pencil down and start by making a nice size circle all the way around for his first ear. Now before I do the second ear, I'm going to give you a little trick to make sure that it lines up. You could take your finger or your pencil and you go straight across and you make a little mark so that you know that the ear has to hit that height so that it lines up with the first one. So I'll go down to the head make my circle, hit that dot, and come back down to the other side. And now my ears should look around a similar size. Remember, you could always fix it if you need to. Now we're gonna start with the inside of Mickey's head. So I'm gonna go right into the middle, and right in the center, I'm gonna make the letter V. Just a little bit wider than I would normally write it. I'm gonna go right where I ended, and I'm gonna curve down to the same line that I made for the start of the head. Other side, curve down. Try your best with your finger to see if they match up. If they look a little too short, this one looks a little too short, I can just make it come down a little bit more, okay? Now we're gonna go right where we ended on the inside line. I'm gonna curve out on both sides. Notice I went past the first line. I'm going to continue by curving down on both sides, but I'm not gonna close it all the way. I'm gonna leave that open for now so that I can make another little curve for Mickey's chin. But before we do that, we're gonna go back and work on his eyes. So right in the center, right about where those 2 points meet, I'm gonna come into the middle, and I'm gonna start by making a small curve for the bottom of the eyes. For his actual eyes, we're gonna make 2 ovals. So I'm gonna curve up and down, up and down. Remember, ovals are stretched out circles, so they should be much taller and much thinner than a regular circle that you had used for the ears. Inside the eyes, I make a smaller curve, and I can use my pencil to color them in so that I remember it should be black later on. Mickey's eyes are pretty big ovals, so if they look a little too tiny, you're gonna wanna fix them before you move on to his nose, which is the next step. They also tend to line up with the curve of the top of the head. So if you notice, the eyes kind of line up with those curves that we already made. So if it doesn't look quite right, it probably means your eyes are just a little bit too close together or a little bit too far apart and don't really line up with those center curves. So that might be your mistake that you need to fix if the eyes don't look quite right. Now below that line is where Mickey's nose is. And again, it's an oval. It's just gonna be stretched out sideways. And Mickey's nose is also black. So I can color in the whole thing, or if you want to leave one little spot that's shiny, you make one smaller oval and you just color around that for the little shine mark. Looks like a little reflection where the light hits his black shiny nose. You don't have to put that if you don't want to. You could simply color the whole nose black if you'd like. Now under the nose, Mickey's gonna get a nice big smile. That's the reason why we hadn't closed the bottom of the head yet, is because when his smile is showing, his mouth opens up a little bit wider down by the chin, and there's an extra curved line. So we're gonna go to the side where the cheeks would be, 1 and 2. And we're gonna start by making the curved line for Mickey's smile. I'm gonna go right across, nice wide curve for the top of the mouth. And then I'm going to come down, start right at that same edge, curve down and up for the bottom of the mouth. When Mickey smiles, his tongue shows, so right in the middle or in the center, I'm gonna make 2 curves for the tongue. And to finish off the bottom of the head, I'm simply gonna just make another curved line. So it looks like his chin and his mouth is open wide, smiling. Inside of the mouth around the tongue would be black, so you could use a black marker or crayon to color that in now or later on, it's up to you. And there you have Mickey's face. Wasn't too difficult, using just some simple lines and shapes and putting them together to get the Mickey that we know and love. Now, before we get onto the colorful background, I like to take my black marker. I like to trace my Mickey drawing so that it stands out from everything else. I also like to use it to color in whatever is supposed to be black. If you've never seen Mickey Mouse up close or you don't remember, his ears and the top of his head is black. We leave the rest white. It's black inside the eyes, black inside the nose, and black inside the mouth. And then you can use red or pink for his tongue. I'm going to use my Mickeys as black and white. Sometimes you'll notice that he is a little bit of a peach color for his face. If you want to color it peach later on, you can. I'm going to leave it black and white because I want him to stand out from all of the colorful patterns that we're going to put in the background now. So before we get to actually making the patterns, we have to divide our empty background space, or the negative space, around our picture of Mickey into different sections. And to do that, we're going to do what Romero Britto does, and he uses straight lines on different angles and directions to break his paper up almost like he's making pieces of a puzzle. So I'm going to pick a spot towards Mickey's head, and I'm going to start by making some lines. And I'm going to start by making them all around the outside first. I'm going from his head to the end of the paper. It's super important that we make sure we touch the end of the paper. And they're all spread out. Now that I have those sections, I can take different angled lines and break them up into more. So each one can get split up into different spaces. Maybe they're straight lines, maybe some are on an angle, maybe this one is horizontal, and then I add an angle line. And I would keep going until I did that in every section. And there you have it. They're all broken up. It's almost like broken glass, all different angled pieces. Now I'm going to fill in those pieces with different patterns and designs. Remember, a pattern is something that repeats. What Romero Britto tends to do is he tends to use lines and shapes to create his patterns. So what I like to do is draw my patterns with markers and then color in the empty space around them with crayons. You can do the same, or if you don't have markers, you can use crayons and color pencils to do the patterns and designs. They'll work perfectly fine. I'll show you a couple of ways. So let's see. I have my first color. I'm going to pick my first box, and maybe for my first pattern, I make stripes. So straight lines. What I like to do to create balance or a sense of evenness in my picture is I like to use every pattern twice, and I like to spread them out. So if I put one on this side, I like to pick one on the other side that's empty and do the same pattern. Creating balance is super important when you're making a artwork. It helps make your art come together and feel unified and complete when it's all done. So I'm going to pick a new color, and maybe my next one I make polka dots. So I'm just going to use little circles to make them. And I'd go pick another one, maybe on the opposite side that's empty, and repeat the pattern one more time. Maybe my next one I want to do swirls. Then maybe I'll find one down here and repeat it again. Maybe my next line is, I could do wavy lines, wavy like the ocean. Pick another spot, we'll do over here, and make them wavy. If you don't have markers, You could also make these patterns with crayons. The only thing I would do is maybe press a little bit harder when you make them. That way when you color with another color over it later on, you'd still be able to see the patterns. So maybe my next one, I'll do dashes. Pick one down here, and I could do it again. Notice I'm not coloring yet, I'm just making the patterns and designs first. I could use different shapes. Maybe I decide I want to make triangles. Come over here. I could do zigzags. And I need one more pattern. Let's try. Often Romero Britto in his work, he makes flowers. So maybe I'll make a little flower design. Make the little petals around the outside. I'm using simple lines and shapes. If you have your own ideas for pattern designs, of course, you can come up with your own. You can get as creative as you want. Just remember, a pattern repeats. So whatever you make has to fill in that space. You can't just draw it one time. And then you should make the pattern in one more spot so that it creates balance in your artwork. And there's all of my patterns done. Now that I have the patterns done, I can take crayons and color right over those patterns, and they won't get messed up. The only trick is you have to pick a completely different color. So if I started with my stripes, that blue is pretty dark. If I started with a dark color, I want to pick a lighter color so that I can go right over it and it won't get messed up. And I use my crayons to fill in the rest of the space. The entire box, nice and neat. Now you have a choice when it comes to the background. You could choose a completely different color for each section, or if you want to create that balance even more, I would take that same color and use it one more time in the matching pattern box on the other side. So you choose how you would like to color it. If I made my patterns with crayons, it's the same thing. I can still use crayons to color over those patterns. I just want to pick a different color. So I used a dark red crayon, so maybe I'll pick a completely different color, like orange, and I could go right over it and it won't get messed up. And I could do the matching box on the other side if you want the colors to be balanced too. You can make your background as colorful as you'd like it to be. Just take your time and color neatly and completely with whatever materials you chose to make. If you're using colored pencils are light. They'll go right over the patterns also, no problem. If you decided you wanted to paint your background, I would just use crayons to draw my patterns, and then I could put the paint on top because watercolor paint goes right over the wax crayons and it won't get ruined. I would keep coloring until I have completely filled in my background the way that I want it to be. Remember, you do not have to finish your artwork in one sitting. You can work on it a little bit at a time. I give you guys plenty of days to work on your project. It does not have to be done right away in the one day that you have art. You can work on it again and again and just turn it in when you are done. I'd rather you turn in work that you are proud of, that is neat and complete, instead of turning in work that you rushed and isn't finished. So take your time, okay? Remember, whatever materials you want to use for coloring is up to you. Markers and crayons work the best for the background, but if you want to push it and get real creative and try some paint or color pencils, that's your choice. Take your time with your Mickey Mouse projects, and I can't wait to see what they look like when they're done.